Okay, I'm going to call the General Purposes Committee meeting to order. All the councillors are here. May I have a motion on the minutes? Okay, moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So the first item of business, the award of the contract on the computer equipment and related services. Grant, anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add other than the memo that was a supplement on, I think, last Friday's package, just stating that one of the numbers representing one vendor was transposed incorrectly, which included taxes, where all other submissions were net tax. Right. And so the memo was updated just to show it the normalized view.
Okay.
Move the recommendation.
So it's moved and seconded. Any comments or discussion on that? Councillor Day. No, just leave yours off. I put you on. You're on.
Thanks, Grant. So I have a question about on GP20.
Carol's not on.
How's that? Try now.
Hi, can everybody hear me now? Thank you.
Better.
Hi, Grant. Thank you for the report. So on GP20, the Green for Good program is the recycling program where computers are recycled. Are they ever reused, if possible?
Yes. So the process we're going through with CompuGen, they've got this program that's been long-standing now for a number of years. What they do is they inventory any assets that we deem end of life and then essentially contribute back to the Green for Good program. Through that process, they inventory and then they determine, are there any computers that can be refurbished and potentially resold into different markets, which they then do. And any sales that they make through these processes are given back to us in the form of a direction to a charity. So we can direct any of these funds to a charity of our choice.
Oh, good news. And my last question is, on GP18, it says that we're facilitating the move from desktops to laptops to support remote work. Do we actually have a program prior to COVID-19 to encourage staff to work from home?
No, we did not.
Is that something we're working towards?
Well, it's not something I would say that, we're encouraging staff to work from home. I think certainly through the pandemic and this crisis, we've all adapted and found ways of working just to keep the organization going. As far as any programs, I mean, we're going to continue to do what we need to do in terms of making sure the city can continue to operate effectively and efficiently during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I can't really comment on a longer-term program.
It'd be interesting to see if we could move towards that. Maybe we need less office space down the road. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll call the
Thank
question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. In just a minute. Okay, thanks. Number 2 on the list, we've got the energy step code requirements for the Part 9. Norm Connolly and James Cooper, do you want to add anything to your report?
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff have nothing further to add, and we're available for questions.
All right. Anybody have any questions? Okay, we'll go with Councillor Green.
Through staff, we have in there incentives to kind of step down while having less GHGs. Do we have any incentives to step up? Like, what can we offer folks to do like a more complete job? There could very well be construction firms and developers that are ready to go now with very high levels of standards. But we're not offering incentives for that. We're offering incentives for kind of like that middle ground position. Can we offer incentives to step up? Like if you're going to do a passive house level of construction, you'll get front of line for applications for permits and stuff. What are we thinking about for that?
Through the chair to Councillor Green, staff. Yes, we're actually working on that right now, and I'll let my colleague Mr. Cooper jump in. But basically, you kind of have to work on both ends of the scale. So we are developing incentives specifically for the top levels of the STEP code. So for smaller buildings, it would be step 4 and 5, as well as passive house. And James, it's kind of a joint report we're working on right now, particularly at single detached. James?
Through your worship to Councillor Green, it is true that staff is preparing in a response to a earlier referral from council to develop incentives for passive house construction, which is construction standards or performance energy performance standards slightly higher than the highest levels of the STEP code.
Well, I look forward to that coming back. It would really round out the program that in the package today.
Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Great, thank you. I have a couple questions to staff related to this item. First off, the GHGI, which is the greenhouse gas inventory, it shows up a few places in the report. The definition comes on page 63. My first question about that is, when do we, for at least the two in question today, the hotel and motel and the part, that's the part 9 and the part 3, when will those have the requirement of getting a GHGI as well? I saw a date for the City of Vancouver, it being June 1st, 2021. Do we have a certain time when we're flipping it to having that as the next step, or is there another next step that staff envisions?
If that's Norm, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Through the chair to Councillor Wolf. Apologies for that. GHGI, greenhouse gas intensity, is a measure of kind of overall impact or intensity of the greenhouse gases emitted or not emitted with various mechanical systems and the overall efficiency of the envelope. We're using a GHGI indicator for our Part 9 low carbon energy system targets as a way to kind of assess that in the energy model and start to step down to lower and lower greenhouse gas intensity and outcomes, basically. For larger buildings, we are looking, in other words, Part 3, we're currently relying on the definition that we have in our current bylaw, at least for another year. But in 2021, we're looking at developing specific greenhouse gas intensities that would set those metrics for our larger buildings as well.
Great. Yeah, I understand the value of them and how it helps to achieve the next level. My question related to that would be: do we have set timelines like other cities, or is there conversation amongst your counters, staff members in other cities that the next push is coming at a certain time, or is it going to be every city council giving direction to set the next benchmark?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yeah, there's in terms of getting an overall greenhouse gas intensity index in the code, the BC Building Code, or tied to the STEP code, a number of local governments, including City of Richmond, are advocating for that to happen. And it seems like that at a provincial level, there is some indication through the latest indication of the overall plan that could be in place or at least would be looked at. In the meantime, we're using local governments are using a low carbon energy system policy to kind of incent that through a relaxation to achieve a certain level of greenhouse gas intensity.
Thank you. To your worship, through you to staff on that. That was a good segue. My second question is about the low cost energy system. It gets a definition and examples on page 65. My question in there, does it include the efficient end of the spectrum for FortisBC typical natural gas hookup? Is that included as a low carbon energy system?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I'm not sure exactly what you're looking at in the if it's on page GP 65. Did you say?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of examples of what could be classified, because I'm trying to find a list and trying to help inform people. if you're going to be in the market for something, let's get the city recommended low carbon energy system. And on that, my question is can someone go get a FortisBC natural gas system and qualify for low carbon energy system?
On GP60, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, on GP65, that definition is the current low carbon energy system definition that's tied to our Part 3 buildings. And in that, it has examples, in the wording of that definition, has examples of things like variable refrigerant flow, geoexchange, in-building sewage heat recovery, biomass, solar and other systems, heat pump systems, electrical-based heat pump systems, and so on. But the overall target for that is generally, overall, at least a 70% renewable energy-powered low-carbon energy system. That's the current definition for larger buildings and buildings tied to district energy. But in the next year, we'll be looking at probably a more of an intensity-based index and doing some analysis around that.
Okay, so my hesitation on supporting this, the way it's written, is the fact that there's no distinction of that type of low-carbon energy system that is going to be in like a leave it in the past kind of thing, like what I think is the typical natural gas system, which falls under the category here of biomass, I think. And so will we be looking at, on a regular basis, like every 2 years, these are the ones that we classify as low-carbon energy systems. These are the ones that are on the edge, just so we can start telling developers who are going to come to us later in the meeting today, saying we want to change from district energy hooking up with the city center area, and instead we're going to install a low-carbon energy system. It's on the agenda today. That's one of the few things I wanted to change. So I think this is a good time to ask, how are we as a city at this point informing developers what system we recommend, which ones are going to be phased out next, when is that timeline coming? Are we as a staff keeping up on refreshing what's the new innovations on the market? And my final point on this, I know there's work to be done on this, but final point is I'm trying to get types of LCES understood. So is there city-owned type, utility-owned type, and then I think the third type might be the user-owned type. And in that, I'm looking to see what does our city have for the type of modeling of the greenhouse gases that come from those systems. So I think I got Vancouver's number is they're trying to have it less than their greenhouse gas limit minus 33%. Do you know what that means, and do we have comparable figures?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I'll ask my Director of Sustainability and District Energy to jump in on the broader pieces there. But basically, our definition, the current definition of low carbon energy system for larger buildings, includes this, Lulu Island Energy Company's city district energy, because the target there is with all our service areas is to go towards at least a 70% renewable energy-based system, and further down the field in the longer run. So the low carbon energy system definitions includes district energy, but it also includes in-building systems as well. And I'll let Director jump in there.
Through the chair, maybe I could respond more directly to your original question around the use of natural gas systems to meet that requirement. You would likely require some peaking for using natural gas for peaking, but by and large, the majority of your system would not be able to use natural gas and meet that requirement for 70%. The range of technologies that Norm listed and that you've identified are applicable, and it's a performance outcome. So what that means is that the developer can choose which low-carbon pathway they want to choose, but it would be expected to not be achievable with a full natural gas-based system.
All right.
Thank you. I'll add one more? Please.
One quick question.
Same topic? Yeah. Great. So for the item coming up later, I think it relates right to this point. If they're going to gift the city their a low carbon energy system sometime in the future. Is that going to be our first one, or does the city already own a collection of these? And is that something we want? And secondly, do we want the type that are natural gas systems, or are we going to be gifted something that we don't want to have as part of our inventory in the future because it's not going to be efficient enough to help us reach our goals?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the city currently has about, I believe it's 4.5 million square feet in, I think it's 11 buildings or larger developments such as Cadillac Fairview that have agreed to implement a low carbon energy system, and that will be given to Lulu Island Energy Company for operating and maintenance. So there are many buildings that have this approval, and they are all meeting this low carbon requirement. The first such building is anticipated to be completed in late 2021, early 2022, and after that, the buildings would continue to be developed over their own timelines.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. I had a question about, so I'm really pleased that 250 participants from the CDI were involved in the discussion, and I'm super pleased that 33% improvements in energy efficiency would result in a cost payback within a half a year. That's great. What I'm concerned about is the letter from UDI that's on page GP 72, and they ask a logical question. I mean, why must new developments be connected to city-owned district energies such as the Lulu Island Energy, and why can they not have at least the option of being hooked up to BC Utilities, or sorry, to where is it here? A public facility, and I'm just curious why we are forcing them.
To staff.
To the chair, to Councillor Day, the requirement for a large majority of our development is within the Lulu Island Lulu Island Energy Company service area. So there is a bylaw requirement to be hydronic ready. Hydronic ready means it's just a means of conveyance of heating and cooling in the system in the building. So it has to be district energy ready or connectable, and it's a basic bylaw requirement. But I'll defer to my director to add additional information on the bylaw requirement.
Through the chair to Councillor Day. Sorry.
I'm concerned that we're getting into items that should be in a closed meeting, given the outstanding application to the Utilities Commission. So please be mindful of that in giving any of your answers, and we can go into closed if you wish.
Through the chair, I think that may be appropriate if there's further questions. However, I will say that these decisions are made every time there's a rezoning for a lot of these buildings. So council has been receiving these reports since 2018 as a discrete decision point on whether we should be connecting those buildings or not. And thus far, those buildings have all had that approval. And the other decision point would be around a service area. So in the past, that has looked like Alexandria District Energy service area, and after that, there's the Oval Village, where there's actually an area around the development area that encompasses a number of sites which would have that fundamental requirement to connect to the district energy system. In City Centre, we do not currently have a broad network. However, the 11 buildings, 11 sites that I've mentioned earlier have that commitment. We're essentially building that early load requirement such that district energy would become more viable for a network that's the scale of City Centre. And currently staff have been responding to a referral from council on exactly that. What does City Centre scale utility look like?
So just a follow-up question then. So if we get to the point where the Lulu Island Energy Corporation, for example, is self-sufficient and no longer requires more people hooked on, would at that point it be possible for these builders to have the option of buying in or not?
I don't think we should be getting into that in an open meeting. We can go
Okay.
into closed if you wish, but not in an open meeting when we've got that outstanding application.
Okay, then my other question is, they're concerned about the grandfathering period, and they think that 6 months is maybe not enough time. Is that a flexible, like, can they appeal if they need a little bit more time?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we received that letter from Urban Development Institute, which is very supportive of our engagement with them on the hotel motel proposals. Staff took that into consideration, and through discussion, from 6 months, we extended that in-stream period to 12 months.
Oh.
And so it was that suggestion was included in the recommendation that you see in front of you.
All right, thank you so much.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. So 2 questions. So when the passive house information comes forward, that report comes forward, then those would potentially be applicable to hotels and motels then? Or there's a section then for that, is there?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, for the time being, at least in the first report that is responding to the referral to bring forth recommendations on implementing passive house and incentives for that, that's currently just looking at single detached and two family homes at this point. Based on that report, additional archetypes may be looked at in the future over the next year or 2.
Okay, because it seems to me, I went on one of these tours with Passive House Canada, and they were talking about how in Vancouver they give them a 10% or a certain FAR bump because it takes up so much of the extra wall space to build these passive house. So we haven't even considered a situation where a builder or a developer is whole if they choose to build a passive house. So if they were to want to build one out of the goodness of their heart, they're actually potentially being penalized on this. So would they just have to come forward with their own proposal in this case?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, in 2018, City of Richmond included in their building bylaw amendment a mechanism to actually accept thicker than standard for smaller buildings, anyways. Part 9 townhomes, single detached homes, triplexes, etc. Thicker insulated wall assemblies beyond, say, 6 inches, which is your typical wall assembly, by not counting that insulation beyond the sheathing. So that is kind of already in there in terms of allowance and not being penalized for thicker insulated walls. But some passive house archetypes require even greater amounts of wall thickness, so that will definitely be considered in the forthcoming report. But at this point, there's no penalty in our current bylaw for a thicker insulated wall assembly.
Okay. And then my second question is, do we as a city have a preference? So if they do this, they can either build to step 3 or they can build to step 2 and produce this low carbon energy system, which they then turn over to the city. Do we have a preference? And if we do, then would we want to make that step 1? Like, do we want to create an even bigger incentive for them to do it? Or do we not have a preference?
To the chair, to Councillor Liu, a lot of analysis was done in background to determine what would be an adequate or reasonable incentive to encourage low carbon energy systems in both smaller buildings, so Part 9, as well as larger buildings, Part 3. And through that analysis and engagement with industry on both sides, the feedback we received felt that was a one-step relaxation was adequate incentive.
Okay, Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to staff for the report. I really appreciated reading the comments from the public consultation. And I think, these are people who are in the industry and bringing products online, so I think it's really good to hear what they have to say. And I noticed that the builders appreciated the city's training and gave suggestions for other topics for training. And just wondering, where does that funding come from? And are we looking at other sessions in the future then?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, yes, staff have definitely got a program of work and for further engagement based on the topics that were identified through our engagement. One of the questions we asked was, did they find that the training on air tightness and other things that we put forward, building envelope, was that useful? Very much so. And even as they're building to higher step code levels. So we're going to continue our Builder Breakfast series and look to actually accelerate that engagement with our design and construction industry on that.
All right, thank you. And I just have one question on GP 72 in the letter from UDI. It's actually the last sentence. Homeowners and tenants are paying much more for their units to have their energy costs regulated by the city. And, coming later in the Finance Committee, where, pages 61 and 62, when we're looking at setting the rates, we see them as being on a sustainable basis and competitive rates. So did they send any data or, what's the data that we use? Because I know that, and this is not the first time they've said that, so it just seems a bit, they're kind of competing here.
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, I'll answer your question. And I agree, we could talk about this further if you like in the Finance Committee. We have assessed our rates as business as usual, and what we find often when we go to AGMs with the strata and we explain how our rates work, they fully understand how we're calculating our rates. Our rates cover your basic gas or electricity costs that you would otherwise pay, but often we see that they don't consider maintenance and replacement costs. So our rates do include that. So it is a competitive rate based on the full life cycle of the equipment for the ownership that has benefited from the strata owner.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Rao.
Yes, Your Worship. Actually, Councillor McPhail asked part of my question for the comments from UDI in their letter on page GP 72. Now, I also want to refer this back to GP page 26, second paragraph. So on one hand, UDI are saying that owners have to pay more for these units. But I think in the second paragraph, GP 26, staff mentioned that within half a year of occupants, they would recover the additional cost. So there's a discrepancy here. So what is staff's comment on this? Is it really more expensive, or can they recover it in a short time?
Through the chair to Councillor Au. On GP 26, we listed some comparators between going to different step code levels. That information comes out of the a large province-wide study that was conducted by the province of BC through the Step Code Council called the Metrics Research Study. And there it looked at basically combinations of mechanicals and envelope measures in all the different step code levels for all the different archetypes. And so we referred to that in there in terms of the incremental cost difference, and we found it was quite minimal, especially at the hotel level between step 2 and 3. Your current code is very close to step code level 2. So basically, at least in wood frame and in hotels with higher occupant loads, Step 3 is as highly achievable, but Step 2 is also an attractive option vis-a-vis a low-carbon energy system option.
Thank you.
All right, someone want to make a motion? Moved and seconded. Any further comments? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, that brings us to item number 3, which is the application for the strata tile conversion on Viking Way and Crestwood Place. So first of all, I'll go to staff, and then I think the applicants are going to be on the line. So let's go to staff for any further comments that you may have.
Nothing to add, Your Worship. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, I'll ask whoever. Claudia, if you could let them in. So just as we're letting them in, apparently it's Bob Cabral, Dan Kupa, and Louise Taguleo. They'll be on the line. They say just to answer questions, so we'll find that out. Are they now in the meeting, Claudia?
Sorry, Your Worship, they've been disconnected and we're trying to contact them again.
Okay. They have been disconnected. We seem to do that around here. Sorry?
They hung up, so we have to try to call them.
They hung up.
Or they got disconnected.
They got hung up. They hung up or they got disconnected. So maybe what I can suggest, let's leave that one. There's no motion on the floor. Let's go to number 4, the Wydanko consultant's application to rescind the third reading, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so again, I'll go to staff for any comments that they may have.
Nothing further to add, Your Worship. Happy to answer any questions.
Is there anything we should know about the reasoning behind this switch?
Through Your Worship,
Just a minute. Is that the delegation that just came in?
Yes, we were
Okay.
reconnected.
Okay, just hold on. We've gone on to the next item. We'll come back to yours in a minute. So Wayne, is there anything we should know about the reasoning?
through Your Worship, it's being conveyed to us that the reason for the change in the location of the commercial education, university education, is due to the current low demand for international students and people that would attend the school. The resulting deferment of the school until Phase 2 is driving the need to open up the rezoning in the OCP bylaw. That is effectively the reason for this application to come before you.
And then the form of the buildings, what they're going to build is actually going to look virtually the same, isn't it? It's not changing the form.
Through your word.
Okay. All right. We've got some questions here. Councillor Green.
Through you to staff, my question is about Building A, because it's the one losing the education component. The office, so it's going to gain office space in lieu of the education component, correct? And then is the new office space also going to have the covenant restricting stratification, or is it not?
Through your worship to Councillor Green, you are correct in terms of Building A. It would replace office with the education. The restriction on strata titling would be transferred to Phase 2. That Phase 2 area will be restricted from strata titling, whether it is constructed as education space or office space.
Can we also get the covenant restricting stratification on this new office component that is being added or substituted in this building?
Through your worship to Councillor Green, that is not part of the proposal before you. The original rezoning that brought forward this only sought to restrict the education area, not the office area. The site would be developed in accordance with the existing city center area plan, with the exception of the introduction of the education space.
Is there a net increase, though, in the office space that's being proposed?
Through your worship, yes, there is an increase in office and education as a result of this. The overall amount of area that would be restricted in terms of strata titling remains the same.
Okay, I would like to move that or amend that the office space increase is restricted from stratification.
Well, we're not taking a motion right now. We'll go through the speakers and we'll come back. Councillor Wolf.
Your Worship, just a couple of questions on this one. We're tying back to the last conversation on step code. Do we know what this project will choose as their low carbon energy plant? That's the language used here was in the report was that energy plant, which I assume is the same as energy system, is going to be transferred to the city. Do we know exactly what they're proposing?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, before I answer your question, I'd like to just clarify something. In terms of the original application that went through public hearing in 2017, there is no city district energy utility in this location. In 2017, the requirement of this development was that it be constructed in a manner that would allow it to connect to a future district energy utility should it ever be created. The application before you now represents a significant increase in terms of the sustainability features in that it will involve the construction of a low carbon energy system to be transferred to the city as part of this. In terms of the exact technology, that is not yet known. That would be developed through the development permit and the building permit stage. Having said that, it would need to achieve the 70% low carbon requirement as identified in the rezone.
Great, thank you for clarifying that of the history before this current council. I wasn't privy to that time. But in relation to your answer there, just a couple more points to ask about. So there's kind of the benchmarking that's going to require what systems available. I think that's a good way to go ahead because new products will come online next year that they could potentially take advantage of when they go ahead with that. So I'm fine with that. When it comes to timeline of if this is something that eventually is going to be the property of the city and used for much longer term than they will use it before it becomes ours. My question is around the timeline. Do we have a set of certain points, such as that every 2 years on minimum, they have to have maintenance, warranty, and optimization with a contracted qualified engineer? Do we have something that says every 5 years is a minimum long-term owner-funded contract so that things get checked as opposed to allowing them to install it and just use it without maintenance? And then when it comes to us, we have to do a full either a replacement or a very expensive refurbishing of it. Do we have language in there for the contracts we'd have to see?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, in terms of the transfer of the energy station, it does occur immediately after it's constructed. In terms of the design requirements for those energy stations, I would refer that question to Peter Russell, the Director of Sustainability. Having said that, we do have strict requirements about what those facilities must entail. With that, Mr. Russell.
Through the chair, if I understand your question correctly, Councillor Wolf, upon ownership, Lulu would own and operate the equipment and follow utility level operation and maintenance replacement programs. So it would be very well maintained, similar to how we maintain our satellite plant at the Smart Read Center near the Walmart, similar to Alexandra and similar to Oakville Village.
Great. Then my one final follow-up question, thanks for answering that. The city center district energy area, it seems over the past 2 years, it's growing out like an octopus in all directions. Could it not potentially reach this site for hookup to the district energy in the same time as some of the areas just across or down the road?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yeah, the vision is that there will be a network of pipes in the throughout city centre. Currently, the focus of the current approach is to ultimately secure the customer load and immediately have low carbon systems and immediately have that equipment maintained by the energy company, the city's energy company, and immediately have that ability to connect the pipe network when that expands throughout city centre.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then the last question is kind of not related to those ones. This project is potentially going to produce an orphaned lot, and I'm unaware of how hard that maybe purchase of the property. You can look online, the $1 million figure that they're asking for, the Italian tomato restaurant location. But is there a potential partnership that the city can assist with to get things moving, or has that been in the works for years already?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, in terms of the orphan site, I do understand that the applicant is continuing discussions with that property owner. From the city's perspective, whenever we encounter situations like this, our first effort is to try and see if there is a relationship or a mutual acquisition that can happen. In the event that that does not occur, which is the situation before you, we make sure that we have development concepts for that orphan lot that do demonstrate it can be developed in accordance with the city's official community plan. Those concepts are on file.
And so, just to tie my 2 points together, last point through your worship, if in the future that location does get built up, is the low carbon energy system that we're going to get, will it also be able to provide for that building, or will that have to have its own?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, that building would have to have its own energy system should a city system not exist at the time of development.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. It's just kind of an odd question. I'm just wondering, why did we want the school to face number 3 road? Like, was there a reason behind that?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, in terms of the OCP bylaw, it was crafted based on the applicant's original proposal, which is why it specified frontage on number 3 road. From a transportation, urban design, and mobility perspective, there is no reason why it could not be proposed in a location along Sea Island Way.
Okay,
or Bridgeport Road, sorry, Bridgeport.
Right, okay, I get it. True. So when they come forward 10 years from now to build the school, where will their staff be directing them which way they want the school to face, and if so, why?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, if the proposal before you goes forward, the only portion of the site that could be used for the school is the Sea Island Way property.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
All right, Councillor Day, your hand is still up. All right, now, Councillor Green, you had a motion of some sort? In fact, just a minute. Let's get the motion as recommended on the floor, and then you can. Okay,
So moved.
So that's moved and seconded. So that motion is on the floor. Councillor Green.
To have the new office-based games be restricted from stratification with our normal plan, which is generally weighing the floor plate.
Okay, is that seconded? It is not seconded. So I'll call the question on the motion itself. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So with that, I understand that the delegations are on the phone or on the WebEx. So we have heard from Wayne Craig or planning staff. Is there anything more you want to tell us about this one? I know we got into this and then moved from it.
Nothing to add, your worship. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. So we'll go to the delegations, which apparently there are the applicants on the telephone or on WebEx. Are you there?
Yes, Your Worship, we are a group of 4 here from PC Urban, the applicant.
All right. Okay, if you could tell us your names.
Certainly. Bob Cabral, Chief Operating Officer of PC Urban.
Hi, Louise Teglau, Director of Creative Marketing and Communications.
Dan Krupa, Director of Development. John Reed, Development Manager.
You're all from PC Urban Holdings.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there anything you want to tell us, or just open yourselves up for questions?
I think we're just open for questions.
Does anybody have any questions of the delegations? Councillor Day.
So thank you for coming. I'm a little concerned about this proposal. On GP 83, there's a survey, and the survey showed...
Excuse me, but this is just for the delegation.
Yes.
We can ask questions of staff later.
Yes.
This is for the delegation, right?
Okay, well, okay, this, regarding that. Okay, I wanted to ask, there are a number of people who are current tenants that are very concerned about stratification. And in the report, it states that you are going to be supplying a consultant to help them relocate. Would they be able, I mean, how is that going to work? Because I'm concerned that they won't be able to get property for the same price that they're paying today, and a number of them indicated they were concerned.
Okay, to the delegation?
Sure, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Day. In response to that, what we want to reinforce first and foremost is that in no way are we suggesting, attempting, or desiring to accelerate the termination of any of these leases. So first and foremost, all of the tenants will continue to enjoy the benefit of their space at their current lease rates under the current terms, and I think it's very important that we just reemphasize that. Secondly, I think without getting into too much detail on the response rates, because I think the overwhelming responses were in favor of the stratification, but addressing for the moment, I believe that the two or three that had some concerns that we weren't able to address. What we're certainly prepared to do and have been from the outset was, in addition to, again, ensuring that they've got quiet enjoyment and full use of their space until the end of their lease, I think everybody's aware of that. Secondly, we'll continue to fight it to try to find ways in which some of these tenants can become owners, and we've had, in addition to very positive response, we've actually been able to get several tenants into letters of intent for purchasing without getting too far down that path. So we'll continue to try to find ways that we can help them become owners. Thirdly, in the event that there are opportunities for an investor to purchase the unit and a tenant who is wishing to stay, we're happy to couple those two parties together to see if they can find a mutually agreeable upon ground. In addition to that, we'll continue, as we have been for the past 7 months, continue to offer tenants whose terms are coming due, continue to offer them opportunities to stay on a short-term basis. So to date, we've had 6 tenants whose leases expired this year, and we have been successful and cooperative in offering all 6 tenants an opportunity to stay on short-term basis while they figure out their futures if they're not logical buyers for here. So we'll continue to do that on a case-by-case basis. And then, of course, as you pointed out, Councillor Day, we've engaged JLL, a local brokerage firm, to assist tenants in any way possible to find alternative locations should this just not work out for them in any of the prior opportunities that we've discussed.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question to that. So is there any way that if the units are not sold, that you maintain ownership, that you could extend an extended lease, not a short-term basis, but something like a 5-year extension, and then maintain the same sort of landlord-tenant arrangement that you have now?
Councillor Day, I think that we'd have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. We do have other capital partners that are part of this, and we'd have to consult with them. But certainly, our desire is to try to keep people as engaged in the business park as long as possible, as long as it works for all parties. So we'd be happy to look at that, but it would be on a case-by-case basis, given the circumstances.
So no commitment today. Basically, we'll have to hope for the best.
I think that's a fair way of characterizing it. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Green.
Through the delegate, there was mention of reserve funds. So will the strata lots have a reserve fund set aside for them at the start of the stratification?
Yes. We'll be funding the strata reserve account as we would in any normal circumstance.
Do you have more information than that?
We believe it's a 5%, 5% of the strata budget that the developer, being PC Urban and Partners, would be pre-funding the strata corp with.
Do you know if that's a rate that would be applied no matter the age of the building, or is that a sliding scale for the age of the building? I know that it was about 30 years old.
So that rate is in accordance with the Strata Property Act.
Okay. And then my final question is, why are you stratifying? If you don't want the property, why would you not sell the entire thing?
I think, I'm not sure that the applicants have to answer that question. They can make an application to stratify or not as they see fit. to the delegation. If you want to answer that question, you can, but there's no compulsion on you to do so.
Your Worship, we don't mind offering our rationale. We at the PC Urban have a brand that we are building called Intra-Urban, and the whole thesis behind the brand and business opportunities such as these are really to provide small to medium-sized business opportunities to control their destiny and to own their own space. In an environment and in a world where lease rates continue to rise and small, medium-sized businesses are subject to all these external forces, we have believed and continue to believe that strata ownership in the light industrial and other sectors offer small to medium-sized business opportunities to control their own destinies as it relates to occupancy costs and where they choose to operate their business. So we view this as an opportunity to do exactly that. And again, our thesis has been somewhat validated initially already with some of the tenants who were more than keen to buy and stay here in this business park.
Thank you.
All right, those are all the questions. Anything else to the delegation? Anything else to add? Okay, I'm not hearing anything from the delegation.
Move the recommendation.
All right, so that's moved and seconded. Further comments? Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I'm really concerned about this one because as I read some of the letters, I've been here for 20 years and I can't afford to buy. Pre-sale price is too high. Not enough details, heard over and over again. And when I look at the survey, there was 31 existing tenants and 19 supported it. So that's just a little over half, whereas the rest were either neutral or opposed or there was no response. So I would feel more comfortable supporting this if there was a way for long-term tenants. Some of these people have been there 20 years, and if their unit happens to sell to someone who just wants a different tenant, they're out on the street. And I'm also not convinced that that the PC Urban will work with the tenants to try to find a new place to go. We've seen those promises before, and they haven't materialized from other companies. So if there was a way to expand the lease to someone that just couldn't afford to buy it and didn't want to leave to say 3 years, then I would be more supportive. If there was a way for these owners to work with those people that didn't approve of the project, I would also be more inclined to approve it. But this worries me, and I think that maybe we can do better.
Councillor Day, I don't know who you're talking about as to other situations that haven't materialized. But I think that we do have an obligation, if we're going to make those kind of statements, that they would be backed up with some evidence of it, because I can't remember any situation like that, but maybe it is there. Councillor Au.
Yes, Your Worship, I want to ask staff a question. Now, with this this change, right, from rental to stratification, will it make it more difficult in the future if we want to, or a developer wants to redevelop the site, to densify the site? Because I think we have the policy, or you have the wish that, we can make better use of this industrial land. So with that change, and also many more small owners of the building, would it be more difficult in the future for any kind of redevelopment or densification?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, what I would say in response to that question is the more owners, the more people that would be involved in any redevelopment. So from a strict number of people involved, yes, it would be more difficult to redevelop a site with multiple strata lots versus a single ownership parcel.
All right. Councillor Green.
Thanks. I think that I've got some concerns here. One is that 5% pre-funding into the Strata Corp on a 30-year-old building is pretty low. Like at 30 years, you're getting closer to the end of the life of the building before major things have to be repaired than the other way. We're also displacing important industries in Richmond. I noticed that Avial is in there, which is a subsidiary of Boeing, and they do aircraft parts and maintenance. And so considering how important that is for the economic base in Richmond. I'm really concerned that we're displacing folks that shouldn't be displaced at this time, and that we're facing an economic crisis right now. And people need rentals in an economic crisis. They don't need to buy expensive real estate. We're decreasing the net units of units available for rent when we should be going the other way, so that new businesses can afford a monthly lease payment, but they maybe can't afford a big down payment on actual purchase property. So my other concern is that for the low cost of $36,000 and the minor repairs on page 82, this is a huge windfall for a developer, but not a huge windfall for the city. And we're losing functionality, as has been mentioned by Councillor Au, in our future development plans for the city, intensifying our use and making it more efficient. So I can't support it the way it is right now. Thank you.
All right, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Those opposed? It is carried with just a 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it's defeated. With Councillor Green, Wolf, Day, Au, and Steve's opposed. So I would suggest we have a motion to refer that back to staff for further conversations with the applicants. So that's moved and seconded. Discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That brings us to, let's see, we did the next one. So it's to the council and committee meeting schedule. To our Madam Clerk, did you want to address that?
Your Worship, I have nothing further to add, but can certainly answer questions.
Okay, maybe I could start off the conversation. Let me see. I just wonder, oh, I see. So under option 2, in September, we still have September 13th, which is a Monday, right? But other committees have been moved to the next week or the prior week.
That is correct.
Okay. I would suggest we go with option 2, which if people are then involved with UBC, it frees them up for it, except for the Monday night, which is before it actually starts. Someone want to move it? So moved and seconded? Let's see now. All right, so the motion would entail that the August is canceled, public hearing in August is rescheduled. Now, just before I call the question, we will want to have a conversation pretty soon as a council about we're going with Zoom meetings and the kind of condensed committee schedule till the end of the year. But we'll want to talk about all that pretty soon. Do we want to carry on the Zoom? My guess is we probably will. Do we want to start up some or all of the standing committees starting in January? We'll have that discussion. So on this question of the schedule, so it is the second option. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? All right, so that's carried. That brings us to Councillor Green, the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you. My motion is for staff to provide an analysis on including the UN Sustainable Development Goals in our annual reporting, or if there is another suitable annual report into that report.
So you want to move that?
So just some.
You're going to move that? So that's moved. Is it seconded? So it's moved and seconded. Go ahead.
So just a little bit of background on that. The UN SDGs, there are 17 of them, and that they're used in a way to do standardized reporting on sustainable development, and so that there can be comparisons year to year and between organizations, so that people have confidence in being able to understand what that organization is doing to promote sustainable development. I think that it would enhance our communication with residents, and it would also position us as leaders in municipalities. This is something that has been used in, SDGs have been used in cities, and I've got a link to the OECD report. But to my knowledge, we haven't had anybody do this in BC. And we've often been leaders in environmental issues, whether it's the plastic bag ban or district energy. And this would really help solidify that position and also encourage other cities to be able to adopt it as well. And then we can have even stronger response in sustainable development.
What are these goals? We haven't seen them.
The link is on the sheet there, so I didn't want to print reams and reams of paper, so I included the link for people to take a look at it. If you just give me 1 second, I will pull it up.
All right, let's go to questions. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. I'm sure Councillor Green was ready to list off the 17, but I'm very aware of them, so if others are not, then I encourage you to visit the sites. And so I've seen how this can be adapted in the school district and using it as learning global issues from local area. My question to staff is, from their websites, they've often profiled cities that are taking leading actions to provide exemplars for other cities around the world. And this is a great way that goes beyond our sister city relationships, where we look for ideas and innovations in those directions, but this opens us up to a much larger area. Sorry, my question to staff is, have we ever been approached by the Sustainable Development Goal Initiative to be profiled for some of our actions as a result of some of the awards we've received and actions we've taken? So first, that's the first question.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, specifically, no, the city's not been approached. We do report through a number of other entities, and we do get profile from Federation of Canadian Municipalities and others, mainly Canadian, but not the United Nations. We have not been approached by the United Nations.
Okay. Then my follow-up question is, I just see a synergy between a number of groups that the city has had history with, one being the David Suzuki Foundation and the Blue Dot campaign, and being one of the first municipalities to sign on to that, and a number of other things. And I just feel like this is definitely worth exploring the analysis of staff, because there's already been direction for staff to take a look at where we can continue to lead in areas around the SEEP document, community energy and emissions. And so I think this would complement some of the work that staff has done and is already tasked to do. This is the language that the world is using, and it's translated to all the languages, so we get a benefit of all. And I believe we've just entered the decade of action for Sustainable Development Goals. So this is just the beginning of this. So if you're not aware of it, that's okay. It's because it's just been profiling and making its rounds in the last couple of years, but this is the decade for action. And so I think it's a great timely initiative brought by Councillor Green. Thank you.
Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to state that I don't know why this was added to the agenda. I don't see it as being urgent, and our policy that was agreed upon was not followed. And we did have correspondence from a member of the public asking that this motion be, well, actually the two motions be tabled until supporting information is provided to the public prior to the city of Richmond proceeding. So I think there's a lot of information that's lacking right now, and I don't know if I can support it at this time.
My question to Madam Clerk, if someone has inadequate notice, then they can call in for a notice of motion and it would go on to our next GP meeting, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so Councilor McPhail, if you haven't had enough time, you can call for a notice of motion and it'll automatically go without vote to the next GP meeting.
Yes, I'd like to do that. Thank you.
All right, so this is now going to the next GP meeting. That brings us to the sidewalk width standards for the arterial and minor arterial roads. Councillor Green. Well, first of all, I should ask, is there anybody with the same objection to this, that they have inadequate notice and they want to put it off? Okay, we're not, Councillor McPhail?
Again, I don't see the urgency of this matter being added to the agenda. And I think it should have just followed the regular policy process that we all agreed to. Thank you.
So are you calling for a notice of motion?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right, so this goes off to the next GP meeting. All right, someone want to move adjournment? All right, we're now adjourned. And, okay, they're here in the building? Sorry? Oh, okay. All right, so with the GP being finished, that brings us to the Finance Committee. And I'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor, opposed, carried. Now we have the delegation from our auditors, KPMG. They are now in the meeting. Let's, first of all, before we go to the KPMG delegation, I'll ask staff, is there anything you want to say about this, the process or otherwise?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a standard process from previous years, so there's no major change to the existing process where the audit firm will come up with the plan as far as the audit of what items to focus on, what areas are potential areas of risk, and develop the plan to address the audit for year end.
All right, so we're not asking for a motion here, we're just getting information as to the audit plan, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so I understand that we have two representatives of KPMG. One is, the senior partner is CJ James and Anua Adalai, if I've pronounced that correctly. First of all, is that correct in terms of my introduction? And do you have any other folks from KPMG with us? We're not hearing you, CJ. Are you there now? No?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yep.
Okay, perfect, good. Had to switch my microphone. All right, let me just turn here. Well, thank you, Worship. Good afternoon, and Your Worship and members of Council. I can confirm that there are no others from KPMG on this line other than myself and Anu. And I can also confirm that there have been no changes or updates to our report that we have submitted to the committee and have nothing to add. So we would be happy to present a summary of our report or answer any questions at this time.
I think we could go straight to questions. First of all, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just thank you, Your Worship. At what stage do you involve the elected officials' comments and discussion on terms of the audit plan and also the audit?
Through the chair to Council McNulty, it is at this meeting that we would be taking any comments from you.
It's my experience with other organizations that I sit on. The auditor also meets in camera with the shareholders or the board of directors. Is that implanted in the audit plan?
Usually, well, from what we've done with other local governments, we typically have not had closed sessions with council. Typically, these are presented in open sessions.
I know you're the firm for an organization I sit on, and KPMG does have sessions with that particular board in camera. So I'm just wondering why it wasn't here or even suggested as an alternative.
Right, through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we certainly do that for some other organizations like public companies or private companies or not-for-profit organizations, but typically we have not done that with local government.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other comments, questions of KPMG? All right, I'm not seeing anybody with their hand up. So to the delegation, thank you. We'll look forward to working with you. Of course, you'll work with staff. When do you think the audit will be finalized and brought back? April, May, something like that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we anticipate that it will be either late April or early May.
All right, and obviously, if there was something to bring to our attention that was imminent or urgent, we would hear from you right away, I'm sure. All right, thanks to both of you. Thank you for joining us, and we'll excuse you now. So that brings us. That brings us to the 2021 utility budget and rates. So my suggestion is that we go through this one by one, because there's a number of budgets there that then get to, you know, that will have different personnel from our staff involved in them, and then it comes together at the end. So if that's acceptable to everybody, Councillor Day, you had your hand up, or? We're going to go through it one at a time. Okay.
I just want to say that on the water option number one.
Can't hear.
I didn't have the mic on. Just a minute, we're getting to the water option, so.
We're not doing them one at a time, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to make a comment about the water option, number one. I'm really, really pleased to see that there's no increase to the taxpayers. I think that's great news for them. And I have to say, I have a question. I'm really impressed that while our water use was down 12%, even though our population is up 26%. And again, kudos to the Workshard and to the education that everyone's done about saving water. So I just wanted to say I will be absolutely supporting option one, and I couldn't be happier with the outcome. Thank you.
All right. Let's go to staff before we have further questions about water, being the first utility we're taking a look at. So who would like to address water?
Mr. Chair, that would be me, Jason Ho, Manager of Engineering Planning.
Okay, Jason, are there any remarks you want to make? I think your suggestions are fairly straight ahead, but what would be the difference of option two over one or with three?
Through the chair, option one presents a zero rate impact while utilizing $1.4 million from the rate stabilization. The recommended option is option two, which presents a small rate increase while utilizing $700,000 from rate stabilization. And finally, option three presents the biggest increase with no transfer from rate stabilization.
All right. All right, Councillor Rao.
Actually, I have a question to staff. Now, there's a revision of the recommendation. So originally, I think the recommendation is option one, and then the newer version is option two. So can staff explain why is there such a change?
Through the chair to Councillor Rao, this year was a bit of a unique year, obviously, due to the impacts of COVID. with respect to developing the utility rates, because the water consumption patterns changed this year due to COVID, we've had to rely more on this year's consumption data. Recently, we received additional data which showed that there was a shift in consumption patterns from the second quarter to the third quarter, and we felt it was important to account for that and make an adjustment to the recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just following up on that, Your Worship, down at the bottom of page 34, the net difference in terms of the overall 2020 base level budget is a minus 789,000 and change, now to 89,500. So how much are we subsidizing?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we will be, this recommended option is to transfer $700,000 from the provision.
As opposed to 1.4?
That's correct.
And what is the total in the reserve at the moment?
For the water reserve, the provision has $15.7 million.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments on water? Okay, let's carry on without having motions, and we'll try to do it at the end, depending on the comments. All right, so the next one would be the sewer utility. And by the way, before we finish on the water, I think one of the main reasons from my standpoint, as chair of the Water Committee in Metro Vancouver, we have all the single-family residences are water metered, and a lot of the others as well. And I think that makes a very large difference, though that in the region that is controversial, but that's certainly my belief. So, sewer utility.
Through the chairs, the options for sewer utility are quite similar to water. So option 1 presents a zero rate impact while utilizing $1.2 million from the rate stabilization. The recommended option is option 2, which presents a small increase while utilizing $600,000 from rate stabilization. And option 3 presents the biggest increase with no transfer from rate stabilization.
Yeah, so the way we're reading this table is that the rate stabilization, the base rate from last year is 500,000. And so you're saying option 2, you would add 100,000 to that. So a total of 600,000, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Any comments, concerns, questions on that? Okie doke. Let's go to the next one. Next one is flood protection. Who would like to speak to that?
That'll be me as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So the drainage and diking utility recommending option 1, which presents a zero rate impact. Option 2 and 3 increases the rates, with option 3 having the biggest rate increase.
All right, so this would be zero rate impact, option 1. That's what you're recommending?
That's correct.
All right. Questions? Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thank you. Can I hear from staff some of the considerations for not following, I guess, along with the trend of the other 3, to have option 2 be considered? I know the table and read the report on it, but to me, it just has the feeling of putting this off for the future generations to pay for. And as we're seeing the king tides come in and the strong winds in the last few days, there's a lot of unexpected areas that got hit. The seawall was closed for an unknown amount of time. There's massive issues over in Boston on the eastern coast as well. So I think unless we're well above our timeline, that we won't expect emergency things to come up. Like we just had to cut a number of trees down on the North River Road that were an emergency, that were surprised. So I think putting funding into it, making it a priority to ensure we're not going to fall behind and face consequences of some natural disaster So can I get some comments on that? Because otherwise I'm not supporting where it is at.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the drainage and diking utility is slightly different than water and sewer in that it's not as impacted by external cost factors from Metro Vancouver. So we have full control over those costs. The city's dikes are currently at or exceeds the provincial dike elevation standard. So the existing diking system is very well equipped to provide a high level of flood protection in the short term. And we still have a fairly significant capital program that's ongoing year to year. So certainly delaying any funding increases by a year or two will not have any immediate impacts to our flood protection levels. The other part of it is we've been highly successful in getting grant funding from senior governments. We've received approximately $40 million from senior governments in grants over the past 10 years, and it's been extremely instrumental in helping fund the program. So the general gist of it is just given the circumstances of this year, and if we push it off a year, we still have a good program going. It's just that we're not increasing it any further, but doing so is not going to have any long-term negative impacts.
Just one follow-up there then, if I may. Does having higher amounts of funding in the account for sectioned off for this area, does it prohibit us from applying to certain grants, or does that somehow conditionally, if we have money for it, then the federal government won't give you more? Does it factor into those decisions at all?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, no, it would not.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else? Sorry. Anyone else on that, the flood protection? All right, that takes us over the page to solid waste and recycling. Who wishes to speak to that, Suzanne?
Yes, Your Worship. It's Suzanne Bycast, Manager of Fleet and Environmental Programs. With this report, we have presented three options. The first option brings in enough provision to offset the rate so that there is no, or offset our cost increases, so there is no impact to rate, of bringing in an additional $800,000. Option two brings in just enough funding to offset some of the additional costs that we're incurring as a result of the COVID at the recycling depot to implement traffic control. And option three, which is the option we are recommending, does not bring in any additional provision. So therefore, it does impact the rates as outlined in Table 11.
All right, any comments or questions? Any discussion on this one? All right, so the resolution that is recommended, and I realize that various people may have their own thoughts, but I suggest we get it on the floor and you can do it by amendment to change it. So it would be option 2 for water, option 2 for sewer, option 1 for drainage and diking, and option 3 for solid waste and recycling. So that's moved, and is it seconded? Moved and seconded. All right, so that's on the floor. Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, at this point, I'd like to amend the drainage and diking from the current option 1 in the motion to be option 2. Thank you.
All right, so that would be what's on FIN 45. So that's option 1 to 2. Now, is that seconded? It's seconded by Councillor Green. Okay. Any further discussion on that one? Councillor Rao?
Not on this one, but on the water.
Oh, we'll come back to you. Okay, on the amendment for drainage and diking, going option 1 to option 2. All those in favor? Let's see. Can I see your hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that, and everybody in favor? Let's see your hands if you're in favor. You're in favor? Okay. So it's defeated with Councillors Green, Day, Wolf, and was there one more? Steve's. Okay. So, further, I'll go to Councillor Au.
Yes, Your Worship, I want to amend the recommendation for water from 2 to 1. That's still increased.
Let's take a look at that. So that's going from 0 to 1, so we're using more of the provision, doubling up on the provision. Okay, so water going from 2 to 1. Is that seconded? It is not seconded. Okay. Your hand's still up, Jack. Any other comments, concerns? Anyone else want to move an amendment? All right, we'll call the question then on the entire recommendation. All those in favor, if I could see your hands. Okay, and those opposed? It is carried with Councillor Wolf. I think Councillor Wolf is the only one opposed. Okay. Now we'll move to the district energy utility rates. Alan Polstolka, did you have any comments, Alan?
Your Worship, I have no comments to the report, but I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, Councillor Day.
Very much. So in the previous meeting, we received a letter from UDI, and they wrote that home buyers and tenants are paying much more for their units to have their energy costs regulated by the city as opposed to BC Utilities Commission. What do you have to say about that? Are the people who are on these systems getting fair rates that compare to, say, BC Hydro?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, overall, all basic energy initiatives in the city, the main objective is that the customers are getting competitive costs to the customers, competitive to conventional energy sources, including BC Hydro, electricity, and Fortis. We are doing regularly on annual basis, at least, comparison and analysis of the business as usual cost, which includes not just commodity costs, but long-term operation replacement and other costs, which typically Strata would see as a part of their regular reserve funds and other fees. So LIC costs to the customers are competitive with BC Hydro and Fortis.
Could I request a memo that shows the comparison? Because we get these kinds of comments and questions all the time, and it'd be nice to have something to show people.
Yes, to your worship, to Councillor Day, we can prepare a memo for council.
All right, Councillor Green. Carol, your hand's still up.
For you to staff, I have a question about on FIN 62 at the bottom. It's got the table of the rate increases for 2021, and it's got 2.5, and then in the footnotes it references the CPI of 2.0, but CPI has been under 2% since May, and it's expected to continue to be close to 1%, if not going lower. So is that going to be adjusted in light of that?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Green, that's correct. Staff are regularly reviewing their BAU costs, and part of that they're looking at all additional costs. Like this CPI is currently, that's what we received from Finance Department as a projection at one point, and as in the future, if this CPI is changing, of course, we are going to change that.
So if we approve this today, is it set in stone that we're going with the CPI of 2.0, or is there an opportunity for that to be revised after we approve this?
So this CPI is just one of the factors of overall analysis of business as usual costs, and that's for this year. When you approve this rate, this will be for 2021 rates for the customers.
Okay, so even if CPI ends up going down, which we're all expecting it to go down, the customers are going to be locked into the 2% CPI in this table?
The CPI is just one of the factors when we do our analysis of our costs. The actual rates of the customer are set up by council on annual basis.
If I could, through the chair, it's really just a comparative figure. It's not part and parcel to the rate. So we look at that as a benchmark, as well as the conventional utility rates, and the recommended 2.5. Uses that as a benchmark for comparison ultimately.
It seems high, especially when we just looked at our utility rates for the city and tried to keep them as low as possible. And 2.5% seems like a lot in a pandemic year when CPI is really low. I'm not in favor of it as it stands. I'd like to have it sent back to staff for revision to see if we can get it lower.
All right, Councillor Howe.
I want to ask a question on FIN 63. Now, staff mentioned that for ADUU, because it's been more efficient, and that's why they can recommend a zero increase in 2021. And for the other two, they have to recommend 2.5% increase for other reasons. So I just want to ask staff, is it, okay, how soon do you think that we can also achieve the same kind of efficiency so that we can have a zero increase as well for the other two?
To your worship, to Councillor Au, ADU is now in operation of 8 years. The OVDU will be now 5 years. So if you follow the same trend, we expect that OVDU will or may come to the same efficiency levels and adjustment in the cost within 3 years.
3 years.
That's based on best estimates at this time, based on comparison with ADU. How did we project it? Yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Comments, questions? Jack, your hand's still up. All right, may I have a motion? Moved and seconded. Now, Councillor Green, did you want to make a motion of referral?
Thank you.
Sorry, you do. The referral would be back to staff for, do you want to tell us the rationale or something?
Yeah, to see if we can reduce the rate increases more.
Okay, to reduce. All right, is that seconded? All right. Let's ask staff. Staff, what do you think? Can you get it down some?
Your worship, based on analysis, the staff looked at different options, and 2.5% is equivalent to conventional energy sources estimates of increase the rate. So CPI is not only thing that it increases, it's one of the factors, but other factors that, as I mentioned before, we are comparing our rates to the business as usual or conventional BC Hydro and Fortis cost. Based on our analysis, it is expected that customers who are not connected to our system and connected to BC Hydro and Fortis would have the same rate increase of 2.5%. So staff
all right, Councillor.
Mr. Chair, if I might, sorry, let me just add to that if I could.
Yeah.
And what Mr. Pistolka is saying is accurate. I guess the other dimension to this, where we are recommending, of course, 0% increase to the ADU, which is the bulk of our current customer base. The 2.5% increase we're recommending for the Oval Village District Energy Utility area is reflective of the concession agreement that we have with Corix in that regard. And similarly with ADU, the lion's share of our costs with setting up these district energy systems are the initial capital costs. And we pay that back over time with the rate. We have the potential with Corix in our agreement. We can effectively use the way we were looking at water and sanitary, a provision amount to reduce the rate. That's effectively what we would be doing. but it does kick it down the road. So you can effectively implement a smaller rate increase or no rate increase this year, but that will result in the need to do probably a higher rate increase in the future.
And so, John, you're, in answer to previous questions, if you compare like to like, these rates are competitive with other sources of energy.
Absolutely.
All right. Councillor Steves.
Yeah, thanks. Along the same lines, I was just going to ask that as a question. He's given half the answer already. When we adopted this program and setting the rates, we determined at that time that our rates were set so that future generations wouldn't pay for this facility, and that we would actually pay it off in 17 years, compared to the Site C dam, which will be spread over time and with lower daily rate or monthly rates or whatever, but doesn't get paid off for 80 years. Is that still in effect, that we're paying it off much sooner?
To the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
And probably I would just add more, to maybe make that slightly more. We're paying it off at the optimal rate in terms of relieving the burden and producing a cost for the customer on a year-by-year basis that's equivalent to BAU, while minimize any interest costs that we have on the capital payments.
Thank you.
All right, so on the referral back to staff to try and reduce the increases, all those in favor? Okay, those opposed. If I can see your hands. Opposed is Councillor Liu, Steves, McNulty, McPhail, the mayor. Are you opposed, Jack? You voted in favor? Okay. So the motion to refer is defeated. So then back to the main motion, which is the recommendation for the rates. We'll call the question. I don't see anyone's hand up. So all those in favor? Those opposed? It is carried with Councillor Green opposed. As this finishes our public agenda, I just want to say that publicly acknowledge that Councillor Green is going to different pastures effective tomorrow. So this is her last public meeting. And I just want to publicly thank you, Councillor Green, for all your hard work and diligence and everything you've put into the process. The fortunate part is you won't be far away, because we certainly like to stay close to the MLAs, and you've got a big part to play in terms of Richmond and the province, for that matter. So congratulations, good luck on it, and we'll now adjourn and go into closed meeting.